That would be helpful just to kind of know what's coming or what's on the list.
Yeah, I'm not sticking directly to this. Actually, I don't know if I have time to. People shout out your names and I'll add you.
Sarah Crane.
Got it.
Jordan Beveridge. Travis Ryman. Greg O'Mara. Elaine Fox. Mike Scott. Casey Walatich. Dale Spitzer. Conaloo Williams. Thank you.
I think I got everybody. All right, the live stream has started. Okay. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for being here today. We are very pleased to be able to provide a return to school planning update Q&A session with Superintendent Scott and some other members of the executive team. Mike, would you like to introduce your fellow staff members here on the screen?
All right, thank you, Beth, and thank you for everybody that's joined us today. I'm just going to go across my screen. I'm not sure what order everyone else has seen that in, but the person that was just talking is Beth Grazer. She runs our communications for the district. We have a number of staff members that are representing special education, and I'm representing the services that we provide for students with disabilities. And on this call, we've got Sarah Crane, we've got Greg O'Mara, we've got Elaine Fox. I think those are the three. We've also got on this call, we've got our technology. He runs our technology department. That's Jordan Beveridge. Travis Ryman's assistant superintendent, as is Dale Spitzer, assistant superintendent. We've got Conaloo Williams, who is our human resource officer. And we've got Casey Walatich, who is our operations officer. So that's who is available to answer questions today.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So before we launch into the Q&A session, I would like to show a video that we have produced that will also be going out to all families later to clock with our return to school planning update. This video is intended to provide a little bit more information about our return to school planning efforts, and also to showcase what a day in the life of the hybrid model would look like. So I'm going to share my screen and present that video now, and then after we watch that, we will get into some specific Q&As.
Hi, I'm Beth Grazer, Communications Officer for the Hillsboro School District. Today, we'd like to make sure students and families know their instructional options for the remainder of the school year. And for those who elect to return to school in person, what a typical day will look like. Students who are currently enrolled in Hillsboro Online Academy will remain at HOA for the rest of this school year. Students who are currently engaged in comprehensive distance learning through their homeschool will have two options. They can remain in CDL full-time, or they can participate in hybrid instruction. For students in grades pre-K through 2, hybrid instruction is based on a daily model where students come to school in person for a slightly shortened school day and continue to do CDL for a portion of their music, PE, and extra supports. For students in grades 3 through 6, hybrid instruction is based on a 2-day-per-week model, which means that students will be coming to school in person either Monday and Thursday or Tuesday and Friday for a slightly shortened school day and doing CDL on the other days of the week. The hybrid model for students in grades 7 through 12 is still being determined. Our goal is for students to come to school in person for at least a portion of their week and do CDL for the remainder of the week. Because the health metrics and cohorting guidelines are different for secondary students, we don't yet have all the specifics for how their experience will be structured. Now, enough of me. Let's catch up with some students and see what a day in the life of the hybrid model will look like. Some students will ride the bus to school, while others will provide their own transportation to school. In all cases, parents will be asked to evaluate their child's health each day before sending or taking them to school. If they are exhibiting a fever, cough, or any of the other symptoms in the Too Sick for School flyer, they need to keep their child at home. Their child can engage in CDL if they feel well enough, even if they are supposed to be attending in person that day. Upon boarding the bus, the driver will ask the student how they are feeling. If the student seems to be doing well, they will be asked to sit in the first available seat with an X nearest the rear of the bus. Only siblings or members of the same household can sit together on the bus. Otherwise, only one child per seat is allowed. Upon arrival at the school, the students will line up on pavement markers to keep them appropriately spaced. They will then receive a health screening, which will include a touch-free temperature scan of their forehead and a general question about how they're feeling. When it's time to enter the building, students will use hand sanitizer and follow the instructions of the adults around them to proceed to their classroom, keeping their hands to themselves and maintaining appropriate spacing. Please note that all students and staff are expected to wear a face mask at all times, except when they are eating, taking an approved mask break in a designated location, or if they have a medical condition that necessitates accommodation. Students will arrive in their classroom and place their belongings in a designated location. Students will have the opportunity to wash their hands with soap and water, and then they will take their seat, which has 6 feet of space all around it. The teacher will most likely be teaching some students in person and some students remotely in an interactive live stream model that includes both direct instruction and independent or group work time. The students who are attending remotely will often be projected on a screen or visible within Google Meet, so their classmates who are attending in person can see them. Students will eat lunch in their classrooms and get to talk to their friends, and have recess and movement breaks. There will also be plenty of opportunities to wash or sanitize their hands and use the restroom throughout the day. It's important to note that schools are still warm and inviting places where students will socialize with one another and receive the types of social-emotional supports that just aren't possible in a CDL model. We are committed to engaging and connecting with students while following all recommended health and safety guidelines. If a child does feel sick during the course of the school day, they will be sent to the office to be evaluated. Every school will have an isolation room for students who are exhibiting signs or symptoms of possible COVID-19 or other communicable diseases. They will be supervised by an adult and wait in the isolation room until they are picked up by a parent or guardian. If your child is sent home from the isolation room with COVID-19-like symptoms, instructions will be given to you on next steps and when your child can return to school. If a classroom cohort has one or more individuals test positive for COVID-19, families will be notified. Next steps will be based on consultation with the district nurse team and Washington County Public Health. Specific individuals and possibly the entire cohort may need to revert to CDL for up to 14 days. If a school has multiple cohorts that are impacted by COVID-19, the entire school may need to revert to CDL for up to 14 days. Specifics of each circumstance would be determined as they arise. We know there are likely many more questions, but hopefully this video has provided you with the basics of what to expect from a return to school experience. Additional information will be provided over the coming weeks, both from the district level and from your school principal. Any family not enrolled in Hillsboro Online Academy will be asked to respond to a brief survey in the near future regarding their plans for their student, either to remain strictly in CDL or engage in the hybrid model. Your timely response to that survey will be very helpful to our planning process. We know this year has been difficult for many reasons, and we thank each and every one of you sincerely for hanging in there. Your flexibility and resilience are inspiring, and we really appreciate your partnership in this effort. For more information, please see the 2020-21 school year page of our website. Thank you.
Okay, and for those of us who are watching on the live stream right now who may have joined a bit late and missed part of the video, that video will be sent A link to that video will be sent out to all families later today at about 3 o'clock, and will also be posted to our website, so you can access it there. So if you're okay with it, let's just launch right into some questions. And as you know, we had a Google form where people could submit those questions. And if there are other people who would like to utilize that, the link to the form is available on the homepage of our website. But lots of questions coming in that are all kind of centered around the theme of wondering why it has taken us so long to get students back to school. And I just thought it would be helpful to have a little bit more context put around that question in this format. It just isn't possible when you're trying to write something succinctly. So yeah, why is it taking so long? Why did we not go back right when the metrics got in line? Things like that.
All right, I can start with that one. Thanks, Beth. And I hope that the video is helpful and that it starts to answer some questions. As Beth mentioned, there's going to be greater specifics coming out in the next couple of weeks, but we feel like that begins to provide a snapshot of what the school day will look like for students as they return. When it comes to the question, why aren't we back yet? I can tell you there is nobody that wants kids back more than the people that you see on the screen. We got into education because we know that the relationship that adults builds with kids, when done in a very positive way, results in incredible advantages for students. So we're very excited to have kids back, and we feel like we are on the pathway to make that happen. When the governor made the announcement on December 23rd that there was an expectation that all students come back to school, and there was a date out there, I believe the initial date was February 16th. That set off a lot of questions, and it caused a lot of confusion around that. Because when that announcement was made, what it didn't go into was the guidelines that we need to follow in order to open for our students. So there are guidelines from the state. It's you can, if you wanted to look those up, it's called Ready Schools, Safe Learners. It's a combination of guidelines that come to us from the Oregon Department of Education. Oregon Health Authority has weighed in, has also provided some input into those. And all of those guidelines and expectations that need to be followed in order for us to reopen, those didn't just magically get fixed or addressed when that announcement came out. In truth, there are a lot of things that are incredible challenges to getting our kids back in school. Some of those examples would be there are square footage requirements for each student. So for example, each student is required to have 35 square feet of space in a classroom when they return. If you've been in one of our classrooms in our traditional model that, prior to spring break last year, you would know that 35 square feet was hard to come by when it came to students. So that's one of the requirements. There's requirements around the number of students that kids can interact with in a given week. There's requirements around transportation. How many kids can we have on a bus, and our ability to get kids to school. So a number of different things that weren't addressed when that announcement was made. It did create urgency, which we appreciate. It did create an expectation that kids are returning that we were very excited about. And those expectations and our ability to meet all of those guidelines that are out there, those are part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the issue around vaccinations. And this may be the elephant in the room that I want to address. There are a lot of concerns from staff around health and safety. And what are we going to do to make sure that our staff members are protected? What are we going to do to make sure that our students are protected, and that our staff members remain safe during this return to school? So we have been in deep conversations with both of our unions and associations around these issues, and we have put together a number of protocols that help address all of those safety guidelines. We believe that we're really close, and we have committed to reopening for our pre-kindergarten through second graders the week after spring break, and we are on track and feel like we will be able to meet that. Following the opening of pre-K through second grade, we will be able to gradually ramp up the number of students that are back in a hybrid model in the weeks following that. So we would have loved to open when that announcement was made, and the metrics are definitely in line now from where they need to be for the county. What is still being addressed are some of those guidelines and meeting those safety standards, as well as waiting for those for our staff members to be vaccinated. We have committed to providing for the opportunity for staff members to have both doses of the vaccine prior to returning. We started with pre-K through second grade teachers, and we are rolling up from there. So on track to begin with our pre-K through second the week after spring break. A lot of details that are still being worked out. I don't know if there's anyone else on the team here that wants to add anything if I didn't cover something.
Thank you, Mike. Maybe we could just follow up with a little bit of additional information as it pertains to students in our secondary schools. Maybe Dale could provide a little bit more information about how things change once we move from elementary up to secondary, and how the metrics change and what our plans are there.
Absolutely. Sorry for my screen being off. I turned it off to watch the video and forgot to turn it back on, so my apologies. So when we start thinking about 3 through 12, and specifically middle school and high school, some of the guidelines that are there in terms of space obviously are a concern. Our class sizes tend to be a little bit larger in those areas, and class capacity is a real concern. The class sizes, as we are measuring them, it's about 15 students plus or minus on any given classroom, and we're double checking all those measurements just to be sure before we start considering bringing kids in. But those are definitely concerns. We also have busing concerns. I don't know how much Mike shared about that, but normally we can probably get about 70 kids on a bus, and we're looking at about 30 kids on a bus. So there's just many layers of getting kids back in. We started our limited in-person last week to basically start bringing in seniors, especially those who are in need of additional support to stay on track for graduation, and that seems to be going really well. So we're hoping to continue to expand our limited in-person for students while we continue to plan moving forward. There's just a lot of pieces at play, and one domino hits another domino, and so we're just working through it and trying to look at how we can get kids back on campus as quickly as we possibly can safely.
Could you also maybe speak a little bit to the kind of those overall restrictions in terms of how many students like a high schooler could come in contact with? I know there are a lot of questions coming in specifically about seniors, and kind of just feeling really bad for seniors missing out on all of their various traditions, and just being very concerned about how this could potentially impact them and their next steps. And just maybe just kind of speak to seniors in particular.
Well, this is easy for me to speak to because I'm a mom of a senior here in our school district. So I have firsthand experience about this impact, which is I see in my own daughter kind of the grief of missing some of those quintessential senior opportunities and experiences. So I definitely understand this. I think when we start looking at classrooms, the guidance under the Ready School Safe Learners basically asks us to not have students interact with more than 100 students in a given day, and we have to try to limit their number of cohorts. So that gets really difficult once you start thinking about bringing kids in on a bus. How many are on a bus? Maybe 30. And now you're down to 70 kids that they can interact with over the course of the day. And then we need to look at class size, groupings. Right now we're running 4-period sessions. So if we had 15 kids per class period and they somehow ate lunch in their classroom or went home to eat lunch, like there's just a lot of logistics as we kind of play with that number of 100. So that's kind of a big factor there. I know that we're all really worried about our seniors, and I think our high schools are doing a really great job trying to support them the best they can and starting to think out of the box with some of the celebrations of seniors. My daughter got a senior t-shirt last week at her high school. Another high school kind of did like a senior fly-through drive-through. So I know they're sharing ideas and trying to come up with ways to celebrate them because, we're halfway through the year. They're halfway on their way out the door. And I appreciate the efforts that we're doing in our schools and just know that we are trying to come up with strategies as we wait for the vaccinations to be in effect for our high school staff while we come up with ways to get our kids back in school safely for the end of their senior year.
We are, just to add on to that, one of the things that Dale and her team has done is put into place limited in-person opportunities for students that, for specifically seniors that are struggling and wanting to make sure that they're getting the support that they need in order to graduate. We've started to talk about graduations and what that might look like. You may remember last year that we had a drive-up graduation, and like most large high school systems across the state, we weren't able to do that traditional model, but we are starting to look at what might be possible for us this year. We did receive a lot of positive feedback last year and felt like we made the best of a bad situation and were able to make it a little more personal than we otherwise would have. So we did feel good about that. The other thing that you may be hearing in the community is you may be hearing from other districts in the metro area. And those districts are, it sounds like they're starting to lean towards potentially not having high school students back in person and remaining in distance learning for the remainder of the year. That is not our goal. Our goal is to get high school students back. Dale did describe to you a number of the challenges that we face, whether it's the being able to see only 100 students or come in contact with only 100 students a week, or whether it's the size of our classrooms and those space requirements. We have a number of challenges to overcome, but our goal is to come back in some format with our high school kids as well and our middle school kids. We believe that we can find a on-ramp to make that happen. And I guess I mentioned the other districts around us because I don't want people to feel like that is the road we're on. Our goal is to find a way to make that happen. It may not be the traditional model. It is very likely will not be, it'll be a limited number of opportunities per week, but we are looking to find a pathway to make that happen. That is a huge value of ours, and we want our seniors and our high school kids back in the building.
Okay, this one might be another one for Dale. I know that we may not be able to say exactly what the start and end times for our school day will be for our youngest learners, but can you give people at least somewhat of a sense of what it means to have a slightly shortened school day, quote unquote?
I might defer to Kana because we're in bargaining with our union, and I might defer to Kana in terms of the shortened school day conversation.
Thanks, Dale. Yes, I'm happy to talk about that. Yes, we are in negotiations around the hybrid interactive in-person return, and we are looking at a schedule of about 4.5 hours right now. And so the negotiations component adds another little layer around the conversations that the collaborative conversations that we're having with our union around those pieces. But we're looking at a schedule that allows us to provide breakfast for students and that they would have access to core content for English language arts and math, and then also provide lunch for them as well. And then the other part of their day would be looking at asynchronous learning for PE and music and other things, so that we can also look within the constraints of transportation and what is available in terms of our transportation needs for the start of the day and the end of the day for our pre-K2 students. I hope I answered the question.
Casey, can you speak a little bit to the ventilation systems in our schools? A lot of questions are coming in around kind of the environmental safety concerns that parents might have about our schools.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. I think, first of all, we're following the guidance and recommendations that's outlined in the Ready Schools Safe Learners. That document and guidelines really references a lot of what the CDC is recommending for school ventilation systems. Some of those changes are increasing the amount of time that we run our systems prior to buildings being occupied. That would be considered a flush of the system to get all of the air moving throughout. The other things that we're doing is to increase outside air coming into our system. So our systems are constantly moving air throughout all of our spaces within the buildings so that that air does not remain still. Traditionally in an HVAC system, the systems would come on when it needed to be heated or cooled. So now what we're doing is running those systems constantly to bring in more fresh air to get that air moving. Another measure that we're taking is throughout the evening, we'll do what we call a night purge. Again, purging all of the air throughout our building to run those systems. We are in the process of updating and upgrading many of our HVAC systems through our 2017, but a majority of schools that's happened. And we're also following, like we always, a pretty detailed maintenance and standard operating procedure for the maintenance of those units and filter changes, all of those things that we're doing in preparation to address COVID procedures as recommended by the CDC.
Thank you, Casey. Several questions coming in around whether or not students who will have their same teacher.
I'm happy to field that one, Beth. Thanks for the opportunity to share. There are difficulties and challenges with each of the models that we've looked at for coming back, say for pre-K through 2. But just starting there, one of the things we think will be best for students is for them to be able to stay with that classroom community that they've experienced with CDL and to create as much continuity for students in this transition, both the students who will be coming back to in-person and the students who will still be at home if their parents elect to keep them home for CDL with their family or caregiver. The answer to the question is yes. We think that the majority of students will be able to keep their same teacher due to the model that we're exploring right now, which would mean that for pre-K 2, for instance, students would be able to elect to come into class or stay home to participate at a distance. All the students would still have access to their technology and be able to simultaneously Google Meet into class together. Some of them would be in the morning meeting in the classroom setting with the teacher. Some of them would be at home and projected on the screen so that students could still see each other, whether they have their lids up and they're talking to each other or whether they're interacting from the big screen into the classroom. There are a number of different ways that our teachers can engage with all the students that they serve. We're lucky to be in a situation where pre-K through 2 students would be able to stick with their teacher and come in each day and also participate in distance learning each day. We also, once we know that when we go to grades 3 through 6, we'll need to do a 2-day per week model with, like you described in the video, where I might come into school or come into school Monday and Thursday or Tuesday and Friday. But again, that interactive live stream model would allow me to stay with my classmates, even on a distance day for me. I could Zoom, Google Meet into the classroom when I'm not present. So we're hoping to stay with teachers and students, maintaining those relationships and seamlessly moving into a hybrid model because of that.
We know on that particular question, that has been a value of the families we've heard from is, they want to The questions we've been asked is really to gain a greater understanding of what the model will look like, because they do value the relationship that's already been built between the student and the teacher. And a number of our teachers have shared that same value, that they've developed relationships with students, and maintaining that relationship is paramount as well. So we've heard that not only from community members, but from a number of our teachers as well.
Can you maybe expand a little bit and explain to people whether or not their child would be missing out on level of instruction based on their choice? I know there might be a little confusion around, if I choose to keep my child in CDL, are the kids that are coming back in hybrid getting different instruction, more instruction?
Yeah, thank you. And teammates chime in. I'm happy to get this one started, but get more input on this. We're committed to equitable access and experiences for our students. So what we want is for students to be as included in the classroom community as they can be. We don't want the choice of having a student and a family choose to stay home impact their access to class or their educational experience. So just this morning, we were talking about what supports need to be in place for us to make this transition. And a couple of those are professional learning for us as educators, how to do this in an engaging way so that students at home and in the classroom are equitably engaged in learning. We talked about how to structure small groups. So I imagine students starting their morning meeting in the morning all together, transitioning to a first instructional block where maybe there's whole group instruction. Maybe we then break into small group instruction, and I might be Google Meeting with a group of students, or with an educational assistant Google Meeting and have some students in person as well. And then we would come back together for the second instructional block. Also mixed in there could be opportunities for asynchronous activities where students in class are doing something and students at home are doing another thing online. So what we know that it can't be identical, the experience that the students would have who are learning from home as the students who are in person, but we hope that we can have a balanced approach and frequent opportunities for them to engage with each other across space. I mean, obviously it's going to be difficult for students at home and in the classroom to interact like they used to, but we hope that we can teach ourselves as educators some strategies to keep that school community engaged and to give kids engaging experiences. We're also going to provide training for students and staff regarding how to stay safe in the environment. We're going to provide some guidance on social emotional wellness and learning, and then academic strategies for engaging in a interactive simulcast model. And so we're planning that right now so that families and students can be informed before they come back about what that would look like, how to enter the school building, how to get to class, and also ourselves as educators. We haven't done this before, so we're going to invest in our own learning and collaboration prior to coming back, hopefully on March 29th.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. As we built the proposed schedule for coming back, we tried to mirror and mimic as much of the structure that is currently there. So morning meetings, everybody all together, literacy block, everybody all together, small group time where your student might currently be engaging with a smaller group of students, either with their teacher or with a paraprofessional. We know that those routines and clear expectations for kids help them be successful. So we tried in our proposed schedule that we're working through to make it feel familiar to the students.
Thank you. One of the recurring themes and concerns that we all have, in addition to parents, is the mental health impacts that this pandemic is having on students. And so if the panel could talk a little bit about these challenges and how we are working to support students and maybe opportunities that exist for students to connect with their peers, anything you can share along those lines would be great.
Dale, maybe we can tag team this one also. Oh, and Sarah, why don't you go ahead? I see your hand raised.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that we do have some supports in place for students, including our Wednesdays when we can meet with students one-on-one outside of class time, that it's actually something that we maybe don't have the opportunity to do in normal times, right? Instead of just catching them between class or finding them in class, we actually can set aside time, schedule a time, and no one else has to know. So that can help students as well. We also have, we work with a clinical psychologist who has interns who are seeing kids for free right now, actually. And so that's happening all the way from grades K through 12. And I know we have some community partners as well that we work with that serve students. So I would say that if you are a parent thinks that your student needs some mental health supports, to reach out to a classroom teacher, counselor, or one of us, and we would be happy to help you find something that would work for them.
One of the things that we are very aware of is that this has been a trying time for everybody, whether it be students or whether it be adults. It's very clear that there are mental health needs in the community, and our goal is to be a resource for that. Over the last several months, we have our school counselors that are reaching out to determine needs and to connect students with resources. And as Sarah mentioned, we've also contracted with some outside agencies to make sure that we were able to expand the services that we were initially offering. Travis and Dale have some specifics regarding how kids are accessing some mental health resources on a regular basis that they can share. But I did want you to know that is something that we have taken to heart. Brooke Nova has been leading the charge on this one, and she, if you were just to look at our website, you will see all kinds of resources for kids, as well as the outreach that's been done by the adults at the particular school to students. Travis and Dale.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah and Mike. We are partnering. Part of our Student Investment Act work, when we got input from the community, was the degree of need and desire for more mental health supports for students, and we prioritized that when that grant happened. And so one part of that we've been able to accomplish is partnering with organizations like Western Psych to provide direct support to students who need it in our schools. I also would give credit to Brooke and her team for having developed a set of lessons for use in our advisories and our morning meetings. Those are chances that all students have to meet with an adult. And we prioritized the work of social emotional learning and mental health as an area where we could bring instructional leaders together to develop modules or lessons so that those could be deployed across the district, and teachers wouldn't have to invent that curriculum for themselves. And so we feel like we've been able to, on a daily and weekly basis, address social emotional learning and mental health and wellness in the classroom. So I think that's a great outcome of our ability to deploy things digitally and collaborate across teacher groups and grade levels in order to get that out there to our students. Dale, do you have anything that I missed in that?
No, that's a great foundation. I would just add, I think one of the things that you will hear us say is that we know every student by name, strength, and need. And I think the gift of the soft start in the fall in collaboration with our union really helped our teachers be able to reach out to kids and families and build that initial connection. And I feel like there's more conversation going between students and parents and teachers and support staff at every level, which doesn't solve the mental health issue, but it does definitely help us connect resources to students and families that need it. So we have at every single level, there's grade level teams, graduation coaches at middle and high school level, our counselors, wellness counselors are still available. So we're doing a lot of work in the classroom, but we're also working to support kids and families outside of the classroom. So we encourage anyone who needs additional help to contact their teacher, advisor, principal, counselor, and ultimately, I think it's one of the reasons that we're pushing really hard to try to get our kids back, is we know that part of our mental health is that social emotional connection with others. And so if we can work our magic and get everybody back, I think it's going to be great for kids, teachers, families, just for our global community.
One of the things that I would add to that, and I appreciate this question about mental health, because our school board has made it very clear their expectations around providing whatever resources necessary for for families and students to be successful during this difficult time. So whether that be mental health resources, whether that be pushing meals out into the community as to the greatest areas of need. And so far, we've served 1.1 million meals this year. And that's something we're very proud of, because we know that there are a number of families in the community that are struggling. Maybe there's clothing, maybe there's food needs, maybe there's rent assistance resources that are needed. We have family liaisons that reach out on a regular basis to our families, and they work to understand those very specific needs. And then together with a number of our partners, we work towards not only connecting those families with the resources that are available in the community, but also just providing some of those. We've got the Hillsboro Schools Foundation that is such a strong partner for us, and they have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over these last several months in order to provide for some of the needs that I'm talking about. So it is not only an expectation of the board, it's also a huge value of the district to get families what they need in order to maintain during this challenging time.
Mike, if I could just add one more thing. This upcoming 5th from 5:30 to 6:30, Student Services will be hosting a mental health speaker and evening. And we have Dr. Rick Robinson, who is one of the clinical psychologists whom with we contract. And he will be coming and talking about specific mental health supports for students who experience disability. So if you are interested in attending that and you do not have information about that, please feel free to email us directly and we'll make sure to get you the link. Thank you.
We'll make sure to get that in hot news too, Elaine, so people don't have to work too hard to find the info. So I know there's a lot of concern out there among parents that their students may be falling behind as a result of being in comprehensive distance learning. And it would be great to maybe just share some thoughts and ideas around how we combat that potential loss or catch students up, so to speak. How do we make sure that students aren't hamstrung long-term as a result of this year in particular?
I try to see if Dale's going to unmute first, but since I did.
My finger's slow, but go ahead.
No, I appreciate the question. I do want to say before answering that question that I think we have a lot of students continuing to thrive and persevere in this setting, and some students who've even found inspiration through the new way of learning and been successful according to their teachers beyond what they were when they were in class, which is okay. I think in it reinforces what we know about kids, that they're very adaptable and resilient. And I do know also that there are some students who are struggling. And so for some of those students who we had identified early were not engaging in CDL, sometimes due to lack of a safe place to sit down and do their learning, sometimes as a result of a disability. We have worked to expand limited in-person instruction, and I would love to for our student services team to be able to share a couple of their stories with you. We're also talking about how to expand summer opportunities and looking toward next year with how to structure the school day and how to make sure that students who have gaps in learning can accelerate back into being on grade level or above in terms of our assessments. So that's the way I'd set the stage for that answer.
Yeah, I would also add a lot of it is us tracking our data. And as you know, we just finished midway point for grades. So it allows us to kind of dig in and find areas in which students are being successful and maybe areas in which they are being more challenged. We know that there are certain contents like science that tend to be a little bit more hands-on. And so I think kind of at the quarter, we saw more students struggling in those contents, and we're able to kind of circle back around and try to find more ways to engage through online labs or virtual experiences or bringing materials to students so that they can engage. So we use that to kind of drive the next level of approach or intervention. I would agree with Travis, you know, as we kids, due to a variety of circumstances, have struggled in this environment. And so we will need to planned for summer interventions or additional supports in the fall as we move forward. But we have really, especially at our elementary level, focused on kind of the core, the English language arts and math instruction, just to make sure that we prioritize our time around those two areas, because we know that those are really foundational. So even though, you know, those of us who are into science, it's a little sad that we're not getting the same level of engagement in science. We know that once we get our kids back, we'll be able to really dig into some of those awesome hands-on learning opportunities, building on the foundation that they have this year.
Thank you. I'm going to go with a couple of pretty specific questions that have been raised, but they come up kind of often. Just that whole notion of students who may be either resistant to following the new rules or may purposefully decide that they're gonna take their mask off or enter another person's space or touch them or whatever else. Like what's going to be done to ensure that the students who are present are actually following the health and safety guidelines?
I can field that one too. The first is education. We want folks to understand what the rules are. A parent asked the other night in a parent engagement opportunity, you know, how will my kindergartner understand what the space bubble is and how to wear the mask? And so we're hoping that families will understand that when they see videos from their school about the specifics of how to move in the hallways, how to use the hand sanitizer and the hand washing stations, that the mask is an expectation and that a 6-foot bubble should be maintained. I guess like any other issue of managing a classroom, we'll work with students so that they understand what our expectations are. And then if they have unexpected behaviors, like taking their mask off, then we'll work with them and their families to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. When it comes to putting others at risk, there's a possibility that we would ask a student to go learning in CDL if they were unable to follow the rules that we've established for health and safety. The guidance is pretty specific that we're not to punish students for behaviors that are related to health and safety, instead use an educational strategy to figure out how to teach them the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, we have to keep teachers and students safe. There's also a super rare instance where perhaps a health condition would make it difficult for a student to wear a mask, and we would try to accommodate that if their preference were to come in person, perhaps by distancing them or allowing them to learn in the space without contact with other people close by. But we would have to work through that on a super individual basis because it's not an option for us to be in the buildings without masks at this time.
Beth, one of the other things, this may be a good opportunity for us to just highlight the options that are available for kids. We've got a number of kids that are accessing Hillsboro Online Academy, and they've been in that for a while now, and that's been very successful for hundreds of our students. Of course, the comprehensive distance learning model, that is an option to stay exclusively in that. And then there's the hybrid model, of course, that would be a combination of in-person and distance learning. So, you know, we feel like we have a number of options available to provide opportunities for success for all of our students.
Thank you all. I know there's also just kind of some general anxiety around how safe of an environment our schools are going to provide. We talked a little bit earlier about the ventilation. We also talked about providing staff the opportunity to be vaccinated. But, you know, it's not going to be perfect. And right now there aren't vaccines that are recommended for students under the age of 15 or 16, depending on their characteristics at play. So, you know, are there any words of wisdom or advice that we can share with regard to kind of how safe the environment is going to be at school if parents do elect to send their children back?
Thanks, Beth. Let me kick us off, and then I can turn it to Sarah and Travis and Casey. One of the things that we know is by gaining a greater understanding of schools that have been in session throughout the nation, is that those districts that place an emphasis on the safety protocols, whether that be mask wearing or hand washing and sanitizing, maintaining that physical distance, avoiding contact with people who are ill. We know that when districts do that well, the risk of transmission is diminished in a huge way. And so that will be a focus for us. We know that people have been able to pull this off in a successful manner. The guidelines that have been evolving for the state of Oregon allow us to have a much greater opportunity to pull this off in a successful manner. And so I would say just the focus on those mitigation practices are what is going to allow us to be very successful in this. The other thing that, and I probably shouldn't say this because maybe this is where Sarah's going, but what we've learned from our limited in-person experience and the opportunities that we may have been able to provide just by doing these mitigation efforts well has really served us well as we move into a broader return to in-person learning with our students. Sarah?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think sometimes people don't know, just because it hasn't impacted you, that we have had an assessment site open all year where we've been doing one-on-one assessments. We also have been doing limited in-person, and specifically, I have a site at South Meadows where we bring in kids from all over the district, actually, for just little snippets of time. And I just want to assure families that kids are amazing, right? They are wearing masks. They are, when they don't want to wear a mask, they're wearing a shield. When they, they're washing their hands, they're understanding that they need to stay away from other people. And I think we were surprised at how good they did, how quickly. We also know that there are, we have social stories that we can send home to families that they can start talking about why we're wearing masks and why we're keeping distance. And we also know that there's some classes that are having like Mask Monday to just practice seeing everybody on screen with a mask. And so I think
maintaining students' confidentiality if they do return to school and then they do test positive for COVID. There were a couple questions around, would my child's health diagnosis become public knowledge? Would that be kept private? Just can we assure people around that?
Yes, I think I can. First, we protect confidentiality of data to the maximum. So that's the general way we approach students' health information at all. I have been working with Washington County Public Health and our nurse team, and Michelle Brady, who is our emergency preparedness manager for the district. And we have been managing information for many months now regarding information we get that someone has been exposed and is quarantined or who has tested positive for COVID-19. And we have guidance that's really descriptive of how we're to handle that. And you did a good job in the video, Beth, I think, of capturing how there are protocols for everything from one student in the class having a reported case or contact up to a number of cohorts or even a school building. And so at the highest level, what we can tell folks is that we will be notifying families if they have a risk of being exposed. And we would do that at the guidance of our partners with the local health authority. And there's, numbers of cases that they go by. We are partnering with them to do contact. So we know that the health authority themselves haven't been able to trace the number of cases in Washington County. But we have taken it, we do have the capacity to inform families if they're at risk at all. We do not publish the names or any kind of medical information about students if we know that that's the case. We just broadly share the level of detail that we're told to by the health authority, which is designed to keep everyone safe. So I don't know what the specific question is, but there wouldn't be the situation where we, create shaming of a student for having come down with COVID. There is also our obligation to keep people safe, to notify and to quarantine single classrooms or individuals if we're told to do so.
Great, thank you, Travis. Casey, could you maybe just share a little bit of information about the ability for our high school students to engage in athletics and activities?
Yeah, thanks, Beth. I think it's been, as you've heard over and over again, a goal of the districts to provide more opportunities for students, whether that be in-person instruction or athletic and activities. We have been running athletics and activities on a limited cohort basis at our high schools for a couple of months now. And one of the things that guides that decision is the county risk level we're in, where it has requirements of numbers of outdoor recreation opportunities or indoor. With our county now moving into a lower risk category, we will be able to start inside options for our athletics and activities. I think some of us are aware that Schools Activity Association is starting off their season 2, which is our traditional fall sports. That'll be picking up here February 22nd for volleyball, boys and girls soccer, cross country. A little bit of an unknown right now, but those are on schedule to take place. And with our county dipping out of the extreme risk, we will be able to start those sports on time as of now.
Hey, Casey, I do have some information I can add to that. We did get an email. My phone's been buzzing because this information just came out since this started here at noon. But we have received information that outdoor contact sports will be allowed. That is an update from the governor's office just this morning, or just in the last hour, I should say. And so while the actual guidance, that usually comes out either later this afternoon or tomorrow, that will outline the details and logistics around that. It does look like there's going to be an opportunity for those outdoor contact sports. We'll have more information about that hopefully in the next 24 hours. There, just a reminder that Casey mentioned that our athletics and activities, those are tied to, many of those are tied to Washington County health metrics. We have moved out of the extreme category into the high risk category. I believe that the information that comes out from OSAA and the governor's office will have some details and some guidelines that we will need to follow if we are going to participate while at that level of risk. One of our goals all along, and it's been something that we've been advocating for with the governor's office, is to provide as many activities and athletics as possible. As you know, when those are offered indoors, it's a lot more challenging. Outdoor activities are easier for us to be able to offer. So more information to come. That's just new within the last 30 minutes or so.
Great, thank you for that. So we are down to our last couple of minutes, and I just wanted to provide an opportunity for the panelists to maybe share some parting words, touch on a topic that we haven't addressed, or just any kind of important things to know that you would like to share with the parents, students, or staff that may be watching this live stream.
I think the only other thing I'd like to share is just that please know we are doing everything we can to meet your students' needs. And if you have thoughts or ideas, we'd love them. We are constantly brainstorming new ways of doing things, and we'd love to see you at our parent night as well. And please let us know if for some reason you are having a struggle with a student who is experiencing a disability or has an IEP or 504 plan. And we will do everything we can to meet their needs. So, and we really, really are looking forward to seeing kids back. Thanks.
I would just like to add that you will be receiving a survey soon that will be asking you if you intend to bring your student or send your student back to school this spring. And the timely, accurate response to that will be really helpful in our planning. So just be looking for that within the next week. And then in a couple weeks, we'll be sending you a survey as we begin planning for fall, and just asking about your experiences. Your students will also have an opportunity to show their experiences. And I just encourage you to make sure that you share your thoughts because again, it will help us in our planning for fall.
I think probably what I would like to sign off with is make no mistake, our board has made it very clear, it's part of our values that get schools open. I mean, that is a clear charge that we have. Get schools open, but do it in a safe manner, and make sure that we're not only caring for the students who are in our charge, but for the staff members who are in our charge, and make sure that everyone can return in a safe manner. As you are likely aware, there's many competing views on this. We know that there are families out there that they would be back in right now, and they wouldn't even be that concerned about some of the guidelines that have to be in place. We also know that there's families out there that are concerned about coming back regardless of the safeguards that we have in place. So many competing views on this. We are working to provide for the safety of our students and of our staff, and we're doing that as quickly and as diligently as possible. And I hope that you've month or so that we continue this ramp up of providing opportunities for students that we weren't able to provide when our positive cases were at such a high level. But we continue to march down that road and are excited about the opportunity to welcome students back in an in-person model. I really appreciate everybody who tuned in today, and we continue to work for the benefit of your students, and looking forward to having them back. So stay tuned. There will be information coming out to families this afternoon, and we will continue to do that on a weekly basis for the foreseeable future. So thank you so much for joining us today.